Day 69. Stop sniggering, you sniggermeisters of sniggerness with your sniggering. Day 69. Anyway, yes, day 69, the last day of Roald Dahl week, and today's book is going to be Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. But of course, how else can I end this week? Well, I could have ended it with his autobiography, but I've already read Boy. I haven't read the sequel, though. Maybe I'll do that one day as an individual book. Anyway, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Do I need to explain what this book is about? Because it's in the frickin' title. But let's read the blurb anyway. The book says, the best loved children's book ever, with a little star next to it. Star being number 1 in Sunday Times survey to find out the 10 most loved children's books. I'm supposing Sunday Times being a English paper. A whole day at Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Charlie Bucket can't believe his luck when he finds a golden ticket and wins the chance of a lifetime. A magical day witnessing the miraculous creation of the most sensational, scrumptious, irresistible eatables in the world. Eatables. That's not a word that gets used very often again these days. We just say food or whatever, or sweets or savories, not eatables. Join Charlie in this exciting story, famous throughout the world since its first publication nearly 21 years ago. It's a lot longer than that now. A lot longer than that. That's an additional 27 years on top of that. So now it's more than 50, close to 50 years ago. The Puffin edition has sold nearly 2 million copies and is now reissued with sumptuous new illustrations by Michael Foreman. And they are quite pretty pictures in here. Very pretty pictures in here. Okay, but without further ado, I will start reading as soon as I stop on the page. Sorry, I'm actually a little bit rushed at the moment because I'm doing this right before I leave for work. So I should try and get this done as quickly as possible. Today's reading will probably be a little bit shorter than usual. I do apologize for that. But I promise tomorrow... Well, what am I promising tomorrow? I don't even know what I'm going to read tomorrow. I got to figure it out. What am I going to read tomorrow? Need to figure it out. Another theme week. Let's start at chapter 10 for some reason. Okay, chapter 10. The family begins to starve. Page 49. During the next 2 weeks, the weather turned very cold. First came the snow. It began very suddenly one morning, just as Charlie Bucket was getting dressed for school. Standing by the window, he saw huge flakes drifting slowly down out of an icy sky that was the color of steel. By evening, it lay 4 feet deep around the tiny house, and Mr. Bucket had to dig a path from the front door to the road. After the snow, there came a freezing gale that blew for days and days without stopping. And oh, how bitter cold it was. Everything that Charlie touched seemed to be made of ice. And each time he stepped outside the door, the wind was like a knife on his cheek. Inside the house, little jets of freezing air came rushing in through the sides of the windows and under the doors, and there was no place to go to escape them. The 4 old ones lay silent and huddled in their bed, trying to keep the cold out of their bones. The excitement over the golden tickets had long since been forgotten. Nobody in the family gave a thought now to do anything except the 2 vital problems of trying to keep warm and trying to get enough to eat. There is something about very cold weather that gives one an enormous appetite. Most of us find ourselves beginning to crave rich steaming stews and hot apple pies and all kinds of delicious warming dishes. And because we are all a great deal luckier than we realize, we usually get what we want, or near enough. But Charlie Bucket never got what he wanted, because his family couldn't afford it. And as the cold weather went on, he became ravenously and desperately hungry. Both bars of chocolate, the birthday one and the one Grandpa Joe had bought, had long since been nibbled away, and all he got now were those thin, cabbagey meals 3 times a day. Then all at once, the meals became even thinner. The reason for this was that the toothpaste factory, the place where Mr. Bucket worked, suddenly went bust and had to close down. Quickly, Mr. Bucket tried to get another job, but he had no luck. In the end, the only way in which he managed to earn a few pennies was by shoveling snow in the streets, but it wasn't enough to buy even a quarter of the food that 7 people needed. The situation became desperate. Breakfast was now a single slice of bread for each person now, and lunch was maybe half a boiled potato. Slowly but surely, everybody in the house began to starve. And every day, little Charlie Bucket, trudging through the snow on his way to school, would have to pass Mr. Willy Wonka's giant chocolate factory. And every day, as he came near to it, he would lift his small pointed nose high in the air and sniff the wonderful sweet smell of melting chocolate. Sometimes he would stand motionless outside the gates for several minutes on end, taking a deep, swallowing breaths. There is no A in there. Taking deep, swallowing breaths, as though he were trying to eat the smell itself. "That child," said Grandpa Joe, poking his head up from under the blanket one icy morning. "That child has got to have more food. It doesn't matter about us. We're too old to begin with. But he's a growing boy. He can't go on like this. He's beginning to look like a skeleton." "But what can we do?" "What can one do?" murmured Grandma Josephine miserably. "He refuses to take any of ours. I hear his mother tried to slip her own piece of bread onto his plate at breakfast this morning, but he wouldn't touch it. He made her take it back." "He's a fine little fellow," said Grandpa George. "He deserves better than this." The cruel weather went on, and every day Charlie Bucket grew thinner and thinner. His face became frighteningly white and pinched. The skin was drawn so tightly over the cheeks you could see the shapes of the bones underneath. It seemed doubtful whether he could go on much longer like this without becoming dangerously ill. And now, very calmly, with that curious wisdom that seems to come so often to small children in times of hardship, he began to make little changes here and there in some of the things that he did, so as to save his strength. In the mornings, he left the house 10 minutes earlier so that he could walk slowly to school without ever having to run. He sat quietly in the classroom during break, resting himself, while the others rushed outdoors and threw snowballs and wrestled in the snow. Everything he did now, he did slowly and carefully to prevent exhaustion. Then one afternoon, walking back home with the icy wind in his face and incidentally feeling hungrier than he had ever felt before, his eye was caught suddenly by something silvery laying in the gutter, in the snow. Charlie stepped off the curb and bent down to examine it. Part of it was buried under the snow, but he saw at once what it was. It was a 50-pence piece. Quickly, he looked around him. Had somebody just dropped it? No, that was impossible because of the way part of it was buried. Several people were hurrying past him on the pavement, their chins sunk deep into the collars of their coats. There's no two there. Their chins sunk deep in the collars of their coats, their feet scrunching in the snow. None of them was searching for any money. None of them was taking the slightest notice of the small boy crouching in the gutter. Then was it his, this 50 pence? Could he have it? Carefully, Charlie pulled it out from under the snow. It was damp and dirty, but otherwise perfect. A whole 50 pence. He held it tightly between his shivering fingers, gazing down at it. It meant one thing to him at that moment, only one thing. It meant food. Automatically, Charlie turned and began moving towards the nearest shop. It was only 10 paces away. It was a newspaper and stationery shop, the kind that sells almost everything, including sweets and cigars. And what he would do, he whispered quickly to himself, he would buy one luscious bar of chocolate and eat it all up, every bit of it, right there and then. And the rest of the money he would take straight back home and give to his mother. You're kind of a bitch, Charlie. You're kind of a bitch. Your family's dying, and you're off buying chocolate for yourself. You horrible, horrible boy, human being, person, you. How dare you, how dare you. That's a really depressing chapter to start on. We should probably go on. Oh, God. We should go on. I can go on for another couple minutes. Chapter 11, The Miracle. I think we know what happens here. Charlie entered the shop and laid the damp 50 pence on the counter. "1 Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight," he said, remembering how much he had loved the one he had on his birthday. The man behind the counter looked fat and well-fed. He had big lips and fat cheeks and a very fat neck. The fat around his neck bulged out all around the top of his collar like a rubber ring. He turned and reached behind him for the chocolate bar. Then he turned back again and handed it to Charlie. Charlie grabbed it and quickly tore off the wrapper and took an enormous bite. Then he took another, and oh, the joy of being able to cram large pieces of something sweet and solid into one's mouth. The sheer blissful joy of being able to fill one's mouth with rich, solid food.
"Looks like you ordered that one, sonny,"
the shopkeeper said pleasantly. Charlie nodded, his mouth bulging with chocolate. The shopkeeper put Charlie's change in the counter.
"Take it easy," he said. "It'll give you a tummy ache if you swallow it like that without chewing."
Charlie went on wolfing the chocolate. He couldn't stop, and in less than half a minute the whole thing had disappeared down his throat. He was quite out of breath, but he felt marvelously, extraordinarily happy. He reached out a hand to take the change. Then he paused. His eyes were just above the level of the counter. They were staring at the silver coins lying there. The coins were all 5-penny pieces. There were 9 of them altogether. Surely it wouldn't matter if you spent just 1 more. "I think," he said quietly, I'll just have 1 more of those chocolate bars. The same kind as before, please."
"Why not?"
the fat keeper said, reaching behind him again and taking another Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mellow Delight from the shelf. He laid it on the counter. Charlie picked it up and tore off the wrapper. And suddenly, from underneath the wrapper, there came a brilliant flash of gold. Charlie's heart stood still.
"It's a golden ticket!"
screamed the shopkeeper, leaping about a foot in the air.
"You've got a golden ticket! You've found the last golden ticket! Hey, would you believe it? Come look at this, everybody! The kid's found Wonka's last golden ticket! There it is! It's right there in his hands!"
It seemed as though the shopkeeper might be going to have a fit.
"In my shop, too!" he yelled. "He found it right here in my little shop! Someone call the newspapers quick and let them know! Watch out now, sonny! Don't tear it as you unwrap it! That thing's precious!"
In a few seconds, there was a crowd of about 20 people clustering around Charlie, and many more were pushing their way in from the street. Everybody wanted to get a look at the golden ticket and at the lucky finder. "Where is it?" somebody shouted. "Hold it up so all of us can see." "There it is! There!" someone else shouted. "He's holding it in his hands. See the gold shining?" "How did he manage to find it, I'd like to know?" a large boy shouted angrily. 20 bars a day I've been buying for weeks and weeks." "Think of all the free stuff he'll be getting too," another boy said enviously. "A lifetime supply." "He'll need it, the skitty little shrimp," a girl said laughing. Charlie hadn't moved. He hadn't even unwrapped the golden ticket from around the chocolate. He was standing very still, holding it tightly with both hands while the crowd pushed and shouted all around him. He felt quite dizzy. There was a peculiar floating sensation coming over him, as though he were floating up in the air like a balloon. His feet didn't seem to be touching the ground at all. He could hear his heart thumping. Away loudly somewhere in his throat. Sorry, try that one again. He could hear his heart thumping away loudly somewhere in his throat. Sorry, there's a line break there, and it's annoyingly in the middle of that adjective thing. At that point, he became aware of a hand resting lightly on his shoulder, and when he looked up, he saw a tall man standing over him. Listen, the man whispered. I'll buy it from you. I'll give you £50. How about it, eh? And I'll give you a new bicycle as well, okay? Are you crazy? Shouted a woman who was standing equally close. Why, I'd give him £200 for that ticket. You want to sell that ticket for £200, young man? That's quite enough of that, the fat shopkeeper shouted, pushing his way through the crowd and taking Charlie firmly by the arm. Leave the kid alone, will you? Make way there. Let him out. And to Charlie, as he led him to the door, he whispered, Don't you let anybody have it. Take it straight home, quickly, before you lose it. Run all the way, and don't stop till you get there. You understand? Charlie nodded. You know something? The fat shopkeeper said, pausing a moment and smiling at Charlie. I have a feeling you needed a break like this. I'm awfully glad you got it. Good luck to you, Sonny. Thank you, Charlie said, and off he went, running through the snow as fast as his legs would go. And as he flew past Mr. Willy Wonka's factory, he turned and waved at it and sang out, I'll be seeing you soon! And 5 minutes later, he arrived at his own home. Well, this seems like a good place to stop, I think. Yeah, it ended on an upbeat note. Yay, Charlie! You forgot your change. You forgot your change. That was 40 pence, 40 pence. That could have bought even more chocolate bars or family food. Yeah. But okay, whatever, Charlie, whatever. You are the main story of this, the main character of this story, so that's okay for you. Anyway, that was day 69. Day 69 of the 100 Days of Narration Challenge, and this was the end of Roald Dahl Week, ending with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I hope you enjoyed that. Tomorrow will be another theme week, and tomorrow will be another Mystery Book Challenge. Mystery Book Challenge number 10! Mystery Book Challenge number 10. I've done this 10 times already. That's insane. Yikes. Wow. Crazy. Madness. So come back tomorrow and be partaking in the Mystery Book Challenge, and hope to see you then. Thank you. Hey, you seem like a cool, wonderful, and or awesome individual with impeccable taste in voice actors. So why not follow me on Facebook or Twitter? You can keep up with the latest projects I'm in, or that my friends are in, or that you could be in, because I occasionally post links to open editions to various projects that require voice acting out there, or that nobody's in, but they're interesting projects nonetheless that you may also find interesting. Also, lots of random thoughts about whatever's on my mind at that particular moment. Usually it's about food or video games, or foodie video games. Anyway, you can follow me on Facebook at OmadonVA or Twitter at Omadon. Hope to see you there.